We are continuing to follow the breaking news this evening that President-elect Trump has selected Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Secretary of Health and Human Services. Kennedy faced several controversies during his own White House bid, including this conspiracy theory about COVID-19.
COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese.
Let's bring in Clare Malone for analysis. She has covered RFK Jr. for The New Yorker, wrote an extensive deep dive on a lot of his beliefs. Clare Malone, thank you so much for being with us. Take us through the evolution, if you will, from RFK Jr., the environmental hero and activist lawyer, to the RFK Jr. of today, who has espoused support for raw milk and railed against seed oils and has argued erroneously that vaccines are dangerous to children.
Yeah, Kennedy was seen as someone with real clout in the New York City environmental scene, super kind of, against the man, very skeptical of corporations, and did a lot of litigation work against genuine corporate polluters, particularly of the Hudson River, which at one point was very, very polluted. And so he does have these bona fides in the environmental movement. And in the early 2000s, he started verging into this vaccine skepticism that really took hold and I think was sort of exacerbated by his corporate skepticism. I mean, if you listen or if you went to his events during the campaign, he actually was sort of clever not to mention his anti-vaccine views all that much, but he talked a ton about corporate capture and about how Americans are being poisoned by corporations. And I think it's, his movement from respected member of a Democratic family, and obviously we cannot undersell the fact that, Kennedy got to his place of prominence very much through the Kennedy name. I mean, though he is also, I think, he's sort of a charismatic presence in many ways, a person who was able to move through New York society and raise money for his causes. But he sort of went to this place of the MAHA movement, make America healthy again, in a way that a lot of Americans, I think, in the past 4 or 5 years have kind of glommed onto, that COVID vaccines made them skeptical, and that skepticism sort of turned their head everywhere and sort of made them say, well, what's happening in my food and medicine and water? And I think, he is this very interesting encapsulation of some Americans' knee-jerk reaction to the pandemic, obviously packaged in, a Kennedy name. So he's quite an interesting figure.
And I think one of the important things to note about him is that he has taken positions that a lot of health experts do agree with. He's talked about the danger of processed foods and wanting to make sure that kids eat healthier meals at school. At the same time, he has said that he wants to have every nutritional scientist across HHS and the Department of Agriculture fired on day one. So he has a very ambitious agenda that has left some health experts in this country pretty worried.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's too early for me to speculate about, what he might do on day one, although the rhetoric is obviously there from the campaign. One thing I think we do know about Kennedy, though, is that he has for a long time, even as others were sort of, kind of calling him a tinfoil hat conspiracist, he has really taken himself seriously. He really believed that he could and should be president of the United States. And I do think he has this vocational, aspirational sense of mission, which, some of it is egotism, as it is with all politicians. But I do think he has a real sense that he wants to be a change maker. And I think with all these Trump appointments and Kennedy, of course, it's really, I think his appointment is probably sending a lot of shockwaves through not just the federal bureaucracy, but also, state health departments who will have to think about well, how do we potentially pick up slack from, places where the federal government might be pulling away support? So I think, he's probably got an ambitious vision for all of this.
Right, and he didn't always have political ambitions. In fact, you wrote in your amazing article about the fact that what really triggered his interest in running in the first place was the fact that his anti-vaccine organizations' social media accounts got shut down by Facebook and Instagram because he was spreading misinformation. And he told you, well, I started thinking the one place they can't censor me is if I run for president. And it now seems like that was a gamble that could pay off.
Correct. Yes, he said that free speech was a huge motivating factor in his campaign, and I also feel the need to note, there's also been a lot of good reporting about how much Kennedy personally benefited from being in the vaccine skepticism sort of general area. It's sort of been personally lucrative for him to sort of be in this spotlight. Yes, it's an interesting position he finds himself in now. That's for sure.
Yep, and lots of twists and turns to come as we watch to see whether he can actually be confirmed by the Senate once President-elect Trump takes office. Clare Malone, thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.